Hello, Sober on Purpose. We have another fabulous guest, and we're going to talk about some touchy subjects. So, if you're listening with your children, this may be one you want to listen to on your own. But a lot of moms, especially, say, "What should I tell the kids? What needs to happen here?" And Derick's going to expend some more energy on that, but he came from a family where there was a lot of alcoholism, there were some abuse, and he's going to tell you his story, which is not what you think. That's what's so amazing about it. So Derick is an Army vet turned life coach. He works with people not only for weight loss and fitness, but the mental aspects around that so that you can carry this into the next phase. It isn't like you work with him for a little bit and suddenly you've ballooned back up again. He's going to get real deep. He's going to make sure that you've got what you need and going forward. And you can find him at fitwithderick.com or on Instagram, but we'll put all those links below. So Derick, welcome. Is there more you want to share about yourself?
I appreciate it. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me. So, first things first is I grew up with two very driven, professional, successful parents, which was awesome. So that was a blessing. So my father was U.S. Army. He did 20 plus years. My mother, she's German, and she's been a kindergarten teacher most of her life. She was also into martial arts. So both were up early, working out, trained, disciplined, ate healthy. Everything was go, go, go. So that was second nature to me. So with that being said, that's how all friends and family saw us because we had the house in Florida with the pool, 4 bedrooms and all that. So it looked beautiful. But once the doors closed after the party, the cookout, etc., and the last bottle was opened, I became the verbal physical punching bag because I was the youngest. But I always realized that it wasn't to me, it was like through me. As in, I could always tell that they weren't like yelling at their son. Something happened in their past that they didn't get worked on fully, and they would like see through me, but release. And I noticed that that shift happened when I was about 12, and something just told me deep in my core. I don't know if it was God, if it was a blessing, it was an ancestor, whoever, but I felt it in my core. My conscience is saying, this isn't you. Like I was an AB honor roll student, never been to jail, never got a referral, never anything. So I was always wondering, I'm like, okay, not really doing anything except for the occasional sneak out as a teen thing, like that all of us did. But I never did drugs, never drank, never did any of that when I was a teen. So I knew that it had to be something else. So with that being said, from the outside, we had the successful parents, very focused, very driven, professional. But after the social settings, that's when things would take them over or they would have to release. So I became that verbal physical punching bag. But the way that I released that was through fitness. So I would consume a lot of content from Bruce Lee, Arnold Schwarzenegger, pro athletes, Michael Jordan. I just love learning about individuals that went through their own trauma growing up, but turned those things into their fuel. So one, fitness was my outlet. Two, learning stories of people that went through things way worse than me helped me as well because it helped minimize my own situation. I didn't pretend it didn't exist, but I would tell myself, hey, this guy was missing a limb. This guy doesn't have his parents. This person went through foster, like all these things that could be way worse. And I was like, hey, I really can't complain. I can accept this. So with that being said, is I always felt very drawn to people and to help them because the phrase I love you was not said in my home. So when I was around people that I could see they're going through something, I would just naturally want to help them or simply be the active listener where I would just let them empty their cup. I'd fill up their cup and it just felt good. It was a win-win. But yeah, so with that being said, I was in the US Army for 10 years and I was an athlete in school and just always gravitated towards being the team leader because I was always calm, quiet, and confident. But that came from just 325, 350 days a year screaming from the age of like 6 to 17 from the family. So any other setting outside of the home, I was calm. I was like, this is nothing. Military in my head, I was like, this is nothing. Coaches in basketball, I was like, this is nothing. Tests, exam anxiety, none of those things really existed for me because everything at home was much worse. So life in itself was easier. So I enjoyed not being at home. But yeah, so all those stories and situations, those dark nights really fueled my career. And I knew that I would do something that would help people, whether it was athletes, whether it was soldiers in the army, or whether it was just civilians that needed help. But I always deep down knew that this would be the path. And nowadays, I could definitely say that I'm proud of myself, but also happy that I use this as a way to help others by going through it to then tell my story, to then show people what they can do to fix or control their own situation.
So Derick, I can hear the mothers in the audience going, how did you at 11 or 12, how did you make that decision? How did you take it and say, I'm taking this negativity and I'm turning it into something else at such a young age?
I watched a lot of movies that had the protagonist and the antagonist that had like very dark upbringings and the comeback story. I always loved the comeback story. It didn't matter what genre it was. So I would always watch these movies or read the books. So it could be real, it could be sci-fi, but I always got obsessed with those things. So I was like, they went through things worse. And then I would learn their story. And then I would literally play a game in my head and say, I'm Batman in the cave and I'm going to come out and like dominate this scenario. And I would like just do this thing in my head as a child. And then when I got into sports, I just let out that aggression on the court, on the field, in martial arts. And I just noticed that I thrived in those areas because I loved the fuel of the pain. So I honestly like fell in love with the pain because I would say by freshman year of high school, the pain like no longer affected me. I'm not going to say it wasn't there, but it didn't really bother me. So they would be in the face, screaming, yelling, drunk, and all that. But I would have a blank face where I was like, at this point, I've seen this so many times. I've already worked out today. I've had great conversations with my friends. Like, you're not going to break me. You can say whatever you want. So I would just like stay calmer. And then I noticed that only during the drunk phases, the next morning it would be, hey, you want to go have breakfast? Because they would forget. But during those dark nights, I would just tell myself, like, hey, I have to just tap out and just not give them what they expect. So I realized that I became good at not giving people what they expect, as in, I'm half African American. So let's just say I'm traveling and somebody looks at me in a weird way. I never give somebody what they expect. If they want me to be aggressive, I'm super nice. I always give them the opposite. And I always like surprise people who are like, huh, he's not angry because I could just see through it. So I feel like a lot of people that have been through trauma and dark things, they can read people really well. They can read the room because they always had to, because they're worried they're about to get hit, get yelled at. They're always on edge and just
Mm-hmm.
really strategic about what they're doing. So I was just always that group father in the group. I was like the dad of all the groups. And I was like, hey, you guys are safe if you're with me. But it just came natural because I had to protect myself and I loved helping others feel safe. So yeah, so one was the movies, two was music, music that you could feel. Music really drove me. So some of my friends would say, man, you really listen to some dark stuff. And I was like, it's not really dark to me. It doesn't make me sad, but I relate to the artist and what he's singing, what he's saying, what he's rapping, what she's singing. And it didn't matter to me, the genre. Anything that would give me chills, I would work out to. So my friends are like, your playlist just went from this genre to that genre to here to there. They're like, dude, I'd be crying in a corner if I listened to this. And I was like, hey, it's not for everyone, but it just drives me because I flash back to moments and I go harder. And then after the workout, I'm completely calm the rest of the day.
So
So
what,
that's
Derick, what do you think? So you got Batman playing in your head. I can
yes,
manage this. For a lot of people, it's I'm going to go numb out with name your poison. Was that the workout for you? I mean, a lot of kids come out of this situation and they don't know how to have feelings because they've had to
yes.
shut down. How did you manage? I'm going to use the word escape. How did you manage to escape that? And I understand you have a great dog and you have a partner and you have friends.
Yes.
You're a functioning adult. How did you manage to escape those pitfalls that really could have taken you down a very dark path?
I've always believed that we have to earn happiness and we have to earn confidence. So I would look at it in a sense of physical activity. So it doesn't matter if somebody wants to lift weights, wants to go on a run, wants to do yoga, whatever the physical activity it is, they can choose. So I'm not pushing one style of training, but what I will say is when you push your mind and your body past its natural threshold, your threshold goes higher. Your pain tolerance, your endurance, your stamina, whatever that threshold is, it goes higher. And a lot of people, they can relate to having an amazing workout, being able to breathe for a moment, and then like their mind just opens. So I would live for those moments where I would almost be teary-eyed working out, or if I was alone at home in the garage, I would just play certain music, but it was more so to have a calm mind. And I always chose the workout because I looked at it and said, this is the only thing that I can do all the time that doesn't have a negative benefit. So I wouldn't go extreme to the point where like I broke my body and put 400 pounds on the bar or anything like that. It was, excuse me, it was more so to push my body, to push my mind. And then also, I wanted to get into the military. So I knew that physical fitness had to be an aspect of it. And I just always saw that the best leaders that at least that I knew, they were always in great shape, male and female. And
Mm-hmm.
they just calloused their mind. So that was my, yes, it was an escape, but also I saw it in the light of I earn confidence and calmness, but also most importantly, my mind is open. Where if somebody believes in God, the universe, whatever their higher power they believe in, ideas would just flood to me. So ideas would flood to me, and then I would go speak to people, whether it was a stranger in public or I would make a video for social media. And then I always knew that somebody needed it. And it always happens, even to this day. I hit record after a workout or after I jog or just walk, and just something just takes over and I just flow. And I feel like those kind of moments, whether it's a one on one conversation or content, helped a lot of other people, but also helped myself because I was able to release. So, yeah, so I saw fitness as an escape, but also it helped callous the mind. And then from there, the
Talk
rest
to
of the
me
day, I would just
more.
be proactive.
Talk to me more about calloused the mind. That's such an interesting term. How are you using that in this context?
So, how I'm using it is surprising myself that I was able to run longer, lift harder, do any physical activity harder, and you would hit that mental high. So it is that
Mm-hmm.
endorphin hit that you get tingles, you get chills, but most importantly, you get that confidence. So if somebody hasn't gone on a walk further than a mile, if they build up slowly to a mile, and the next thing you know, they're going 1.5 miles and they keep going further. But each time they do it, they're excited. They're like, wow, I surprised myself. I did it quicker. I did it faster. I did it better. Those moments, I believe, is what the definition in terms of a physical aspect is where we really fall in love with ourselves and we see how strong we really are. And again, it doesn't matter what the training modality is, it's just having that rush where you say, wow, I didn't give up. Normally, I stop 30 seconds in or 5 reps in because I'm like, this hurts, this burns. But once they push past that for like 30 seconds, they surprise themselves and they get such a rush where it's not interchangeable with anything because as we all know, that drink could lead to the hangover. That drink could lead to violence, could lead to something else. The drug, same thing, vice versa. You could go darker. But that physical activity, yes, your body might be sore, but the mind is open. That everything else suppresses the thoughts. But the open mind has ideas. It's easier to work on the faith. So that's a context that I always saw it as is we have to earn that calmness, that confidence and happiness by first moving the body to then be able to be more still and essentially out of our mind, as in like we get out of our head. So a lot of people are running in their head, but they don't necessarily quote unquote run. But if they were to run and walk first and then try to think about their problem, they see it with solutions and strategies. They're like, you know what? This is different. So 1 hour ago, they were like, I hate this. Why me, God? Why is this happening? Oh my God. But if they went on a walk, a run, a workout, they come back, they're like, I'm a boss. This is crazy. I had a nightmare last night for 2 hours. Now I'm here. I'm about to have a great day. I'm going to call my grand, like whatever's happening. It's crazy how quick they flip the switch just by the physical activity. So that is that thing that I would chase is the calmness and the open mind and clarity to be able to control the day, to be proactive rather than reacting to everything and everyone in that day.
I'm blown away. Like I said, I've listened to some of your podcasts. You're describing, and I don't know if you've seen Brene Brown's work or Dr. Dan Tomasulo's work. They are coming out with that hope is not an
Okay.
emotion. It's critical thinking in the sense of exactly what you said. I've defined a goal. I have critical awareness. I'm moving towards a purpose, and I am choosing to think like this.
Yes, exactly.
Which I
There's a
think is
term
what you
called
just described.
that's that doesn't surprise me. I like honestly, I haven't heard their names, but it doesn't surprise me because it's interesting how this is becoming more common, or a lot of people do this and they don't realize that they're doing it, whether it's sports, whether it's business, whatever they're into. But it's awesome how this is becoming more mainstream because people are realizing that they have already the power within them. Yes, they could have a coach. Yes, we have faith. Yes, we have family and friends, but a lot of the power is already within yourself, within thyself. And it is just up to us to break away the shells of the limiting beliefs, preconceived notions from family, whatever was placed onto us. When we can slowly peel those things off, we feel a little bit more open and free. And then we really can see how strong we are. Because if we really think about it, today we're in the end of July. Everything that somebody has gone through, they're technically undefeated. So if they really look at it, they're still alive. So if you die tomorrow,
Absolutely.
some people could say you lose. Some people could say you win because you go to heaven, whatever somebody believes. But if we look back on every traumatic moment we went through, a dark time, breakup, et cetera, we're technically undefeated because we're still here. We're still standing. We're still breathing. So let's be grateful for the for the breath. Look back and count how many things we've already been through. Yes, there might be one major thing which happened from mom or dad, but there's 100 other things that we already went through that we probably don't even think about. We normally think about that one major thing or two major things, but everything else, we're like, oh, I pushed through that like a boss. So it's interesting. That concept I like to bring up and say, hey, remind yourself you're undefeated because there's a lot of things you went through that you don't even think about. You mainly think about this one thing, and it's usually family related. The
Sure.
other things don't really bother them as much.
How did you so you were 11 or 12. All of this is going on and you are in a way just taking it, but just like Viktor Frankl in the concentration camp, what they can't take away is your attitude. They can take away everything else, but your attitude cannot be taken away. Did you connect with God? Did you have a specific mentor? I know it was about sports, but who were you actually, how were you training your mind not to let this in?
How I was training my mind as a kid, I don't do it nowadays, but as a kid, I would pretend that I had a twin, and that was like my best friend. So I was the youngest. I have two older sisters, but I would pretend I had a twin, and he would give me advice. So I was talking to myself, but he would always give me advice. So the
Yeah.
twin was much stronger than me, much faster, got better grades, was better with social skills, didn't have social anxiety. So like I gave him all the traits. So if there's a gamer, they create a character. I created in my head the level 99 character because in video games you can't create a level 100, like you have to lose sometimes. So in my head, I
Right.
created the 99 version of myself. I knew how he looked, I knew how he talked, I knew how he walked, I knew everything about his life. I was like, I know exactly how I want him to be inside and out and how he affects people. So I would think of him, and then I would always like pretend that he would give me advice. And I would also work on my faith. But as a kid, I just did that a lot. And nowadays, I tap into the alter ego with sometimes. So an alter ego is, some people have it in music, some people have it in sports. But if somebody's not in any of those things, I guarantee you at one point they gave themselves a name as a child or as a teen, or other people gave them a nickname. So that nickname, you could ask yourself, what would so and so do? So when I grew up, we would wear "What would Jesus do" bracelets. So I think back
Right.
on that analogy and say, what would, and you insert the first letter of your name, of your nickname, what would she do in the situation? What would he do? And he or she is level 10.0 of you. So what decision would they make? Would they run to the bottle right now, or would they walk? Would they scream back at this person, or would they just say, you know what, you're right? Like whatever it is, you just have to pause for a moment. And our conscience honestly knows the right answer in those moments, no matter how high our emotion is or no matter how low it is. We could just ask ourselves, what would she or he do in the situation? Pause for a second and go from there. But as I got older, I just realized that I crafted the skill of being able to not shut down one part of the brain, but more so face things faster, but be able to control. So one thing that I talk to my clients about a lot is how fast can you come back up or come back down? As in, if you're
Mm.
overly excited, is that going to last for 2 or 3 days? Because the crash is going to come. Or how long are you going to stay down? So if something
Mm.
happens at work, family, you get a flat tire, whatever it is, how long will you allow yourself to stay angry? to stay sad? And when you ask somebody that in the moment, they're like, 2 minutes, 2 days. Like they don't know how to answer it because it catches them off guard. So like I ask my friends and my clients, I'm like, hey, I understand what's happening and I'm saying it neutral, but how long do you want to stay right here? And they pause for a moment, and sometimes they'll start laughing. Sometimes they'll hang up or get off, like, or walk away, and then they'll come back. But they're always like, man, you really got into my head with that. I was like, you choose the time. I was like, it's not up to me. Do you want to go 2 days, 2 weeks, or 5 minutes? So that is something that I've noticed is really effective because that person can give themselves a time limit on how long they want to grieve, yell, scream, cry, whatever they want to choose. It's up to them. But if they start giving themselves limits, they start to take control again because maybe that period where they felt in that emotional state used to last for hours or days. And that's why people didn't want to be around them. But if they can control it within a couple of minutes, they have way more control of the rest of their day. So that's something that I like to think about is how long will I allow myself to be too excited or too mad or too sad? And then from there, once the timer hits, I'm like, all right, got to go back to what I'm doing on my day, go back to another task, finish whatever I was about to do in that day or in that night.
How so I know there's women out there going, well, men can do that. They can compartmentalize, and that's not what we're designed to do. And all those not really excuses, they're just learned behaviors. The time limit for the emotion, there is also a psychological piece. This is if we suppress those emotions, they're going to come out somewhere. Illness, they're going to surprise you at some point. And I don't hear you saying suppress the emotion. So what's your philosophy on what do you need to feel? I mean, as a kid, you had to shut down to preserve yourself. What do you do
Yes.
now as an adult? I mean, do you actually feel things now? Because there are people who
Yes.
don't.
100% I feel things. I also, one thing I want to say out of just ourselves is show up better for others. So something that I tell myself on a daily basis is the quote, people depend on me. When I say that, I get chills. So yes, if you need to cry, cry. If you need to yell, yell. But once you have released what you need to release, which is totally fine, say in your head or out loud, people depend on me. Hey, I just cried for 10 minutes. Great. I let it out. I'm able to breathe. Let me drink a glass of water. People depend on me. What am I going to do the rest of the day? And then be intentional
Mhm.
about the next step. Again, we're not just suppressing the emotion. We're going to release it or exercise whatever needs to be done in the moment. First, interrupt, release, and then from there, think of others. It sounds easy, especially in the moment, but as humans, a lot of us are designed just to be selfish. Why me? Why this? Why that? Everything is about us. I want to hit snooze 5 times. I don't want to cook. I don't want to go to that birthday party. We're very selfish. All of us are to an extent. But if we can start to tell us people depend on me, it gives us a rush, especially in those moments where we don't want to get out of bed or do that thing, because we generally just think of us, me, 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 me. Nobody understands me. I'm a unicorn. Nobody will understand me. And we try to make our situation much harder, or that like it's never been, it never existed except for in us. That's what we do sometimes in the moment. But if we can say people depend on me, what will I do to show up better? We can slowly begin to start to work on those things. And besides that is, depending on what city or state somebody lives in, I would recommend that no matter what their current situation is, if they can go help another child or another teen that is not theirs, Boys and Girls Club, the kid down the street, just
Mhm.
do something for someone else because somebody's looking up to you. Because currently
Mhm.
their kids might not look up to them or the neighbor. But if a complete stranger meets them, the person can show up as the person that they want to, and they're like, this is an outside person, and then the child or the teenager is like, this is an outside source. He or she might say the same thing their uncle or dad or grandpa told them, but if they hear it from somebody on the outside, they're like, wow, yes, that was magic. And they said the exact same thing as 10 other people, but they just needed that outside source. So going back to the individual that is in the current stressful situation, release, remind yourself that people depend on you, but also what can you do for somebody else that is not in your family or circle? Like, whose day could you make? Because when you're able to make somebody else's day with a simple compliment at Publix, Winn-Dixie, Target, wherever you shop at, if you're able to make somebody's day with a compliment or a simple 2-minute conversation, they smile, you walk back to your car and you're like, wow, I didn't realize I needed that. And the last thing I want to say about that is we've all been on the receiving end of this. We've had a terrible day where we had RBF. We're walking with an angry face, and somebody approached us, made us smile, made us laugh, and we're like, wow, I really needed that. But how did they approach me? I'm looking angry. I just cried for 10 minutes in my car. Like, I don't know. I don't know
Right.
if they were here. Was that an angel? Did God send them? Like, I don't know what just happened, but I needed that.
Right.
So I'm bringing that up because we've all experienced it. So I challenge people to give that to others more. When we can show up for others with something as simple as a compliment or just being an active listener, we can make their day. And then we start to feel better. And we're like, wow, I haven't felt this or done this in a while because I'm always worried about me, 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 me.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, so in taking that, was there somebody who showed up for you somewhere between that 11 whenever you left? Did you enlist right at 18?
No, so I did Army ROTC in high school, and then I also did it in college. So I went through the programs in high school and college, and then went active duty for a few years, and then I went Army National Guard. But yes, I did have coaches in sports, but I would say my biggest impact at that time period was my martial arts instructor. I did Tang Soo Do, which is called China Handway. It's similar to Taekwondo.
Mhm.
And I did that in kickboxing, but my trainer was such a calm man. And to paint the vision for you, white gentleman that looked like the lead singer of Nickelback. That's what he looked like. He was just taller. You can just imagine the long hair.
Right.
I don't know
Right.
much about the lead singer, but I always thought of him, and I would always make a joke. I'm like, you just look just like him. But he was always so calm. And it always intrigued me that I was like, he could take out in just a physical aspect, he could take out anyone that I knew, pro athlete, whoever, because of all these years of training. But he was so calm and such a nice person. And I was always drawn to men that were like that, where I was like, he looks like he could kill somebody, but he would also protect his family. But he was very calm and happy. Like you would never see that side of him unless it needs to come out. So those men, and even women, they always inspired me because I could just see it in their eyes. I was like, they've been through something. They're very calm. They're very good at what they do. They're happy. They're well-rounded, but I can just see it. They have that fire in them. They never lost that fire. And I don't know where the fire came from, but I gravitated towards those individuals. So I would say my martial arts instructor, because he would see me come to class with a different facial expression. He never asked, but I knew that he could read. He could put two and two together. I was like, he can see. We don't have the conversation. I did my forms. I broke the board, hit the bag, did all that, meditated. And the older I got, he would tell me, he's like, yeah, you went through some wild stuff, didn't you? And I didn't even have to ask, how'd you know? He could just read it. So I would definitely say him. And then a couple coaches in sports, basketball. And then besides that, mentors in the military. But yes, I did have some males and females in my life that were positive figures.
After all, you have caregivers who are supposed to be there, the loving nest, all of that. You develop this alter ego. Why would you trust anybody when your caregivers were not available for you? Why would you even give this martial arts guy or a basketball coach or something the opportunity to speak into your life?
That's a great question. The reason why I always trusted myself. I always trusted myself. I had strong faith where I never doubted myself. And I'm not saying that in the terms of like arrogance or cockiness, but deep down, I was like, you're going to make it in whatever you want to do. And this is all just fuel and a stepping stone in life. And I would just tell myself, and the older I got, I learned about a phrase called delusional optimist. And when I think back on it, I was that teenager. I was a delusional optimist. I was like, I'm going to do this thing. I don't know how to get there. You're not going to tell me anything. I'm not taking advice from people that don't live the life that I want. I was just that teen. I was just like, I'm not listening. And I did it from like a place of passion. And like, I didn't bash the people, but I would just tell them, like, hey, I appreciate your advice, but I don't want to end up like you. And I was just that blunt kid because at home I just dealt with so much. I was like, I'm not listening to people that don't live every area in life that I want to. I appreciate the advice from them, but then I would just tell them like, hey, thank you, but I know exactly what you do at home. I don't want to end up like you. And they'd be shocked, like, how does this kid know this? And I could just see it because of the experience. So I would just, a lot of people didn't like me for that, but I was just honest with those people. So I would only listen to people that lived the lifestyle or at least lived in a family way that I wanted to be like. So with that being said, is I had the self-trust And I knew that God in my path or conscience would not lead me wrong. Because I faced fear so much with family, I didn't have fear of anyone else. So I was like, I'll just be blunt. The worst thing a mother could say is, I wish I had an abortion. I heard that a lot of my life, only
Ooh,
during
ooh.
alcoholic spurts. So when you hear that
Mhm.
so many times to an extent, you honestly don't have any more fear. So you hear that and see that so much that once you work on yourself, you realize that you want to show up better for others. And you're like, there's really not much worse that could happen to somebody. I mean, yes, there are, but at least in my perception of those times, there wasn't anything worse that could happen. So if there's a bully at school, if there's something to happen, I was just like, cool, it's not as bad as this. So I would like do this thing in my head. And I don't wish that people hear that or anything, but it is pretty common with alcoholics. But with that being said, is because I heard and saw the worst, I knew that it really couldn't get any worse because I was always expecting worse than that. But when it came to people and their energy, I could always feel it, the positive
Mm,
energy.
mhm.
So I gravitated towards authentic, positive, empowering energy. And I just didn't have fear that he or she would also hurt me. I never had that fear anymore.
How did that how did that serve you as you left for the military?
So it definitely served me in regards to, let's just say, basic training. At basic training, having 7 drill sergeants in your face, screaming and yelling, I almost busted out laughing. So I was like 17, 18, and I'm just holding it in because I was like, you guys don't have anything on my 5'2" German mother or my 6'3" black dad. Like, you guys wouldn't last a day with them. So the drill sergeants in my face, I had that almost every day of my life for like 12 to 15 years. So it didn't phase me. But when it came to helping others, I would show up more because I knew what pain and loneliness felt like. So any soldier that I saw was going through something, I would pull them to a side and talk to them. And I noticed that most of my life, people would approach me. Not that I know everything, but I could be at the mall or at a coffee shop or at the airport. Strangers would just come up and say, "Hey, how you doing?" And then next thing you know, they're pouring their life onto me within like 20 to 30 minutes. But I would listen. I wouldn't even give advice. I would just listen. And I would shake their hand or give them a hug, wish them well. We wouldn't trade information, but it would happen so much that I was like, I think this is why God has me here. Is people would like come up to me because I knew what that felt like. And again, I think it just comes from people can sense when somebody has that calmness that they've been through hell, they just like approach them and just have that trust to just be vulnerable. But I brought that into the military to my soldiers on a one-on-one basis. So everything that I did not give at home, I would give to others.
What filled your well though? That's what I keep listening to you and I'm
Okay.
like, what is filling you? Because an empty well can't give. And
Yes.
obviously you're giving. So what's filling your well as you're giving? So I see you holding space because you've been through, traumatic events and you were able to rely on yourself, which is not common. Let me just throw that out there. But what was refilling you? I mean, when you saw a loving relationship, when you saw people actually acting in a family way, what kept you from just being sad?
So I didn't keep myself from being sad, but what fulfilled me then and to this day is seeing other people grow and evolve and have that clarity moment when you give them another perspective and you can just see in their eyes that they do this, wow, and something you could see clicked or something from their past or their current situation clicked. And those
Mm-hmm.
moments, honestly, I live for. It's fulfilling where I see other people that gain clarity and that just have a new sense of calmness or perspective. You can see their body language shift, and I live for those moments. So like being able to help others have those moments gives me a rush. And I've always seen everything as a ripple effect. The ripple effect could be negative. We can continue these generational curses, we could break them, and we could be a positive ripple for others. So if you come into contact with this person, help this mother, she's going to positively affect her children, and it's just going to keep trickling. And
Mm.
on the flip side, some people negatively infect. So are you infecting people or positively affecting them? So
Mm-hmm.
my fulfilling on a day-to-day basis is getting those text calls voicemails, whatever it is, of people just, hey, I just got a promotion. Hey, I went on my first date in years, or I did this and this. I didn't have that nightmare. I haven't drank in 3 weeks. Like whatever it is for them, it doesn't matter the size. It's all about hearing and seeing their excitement, even though the way that they text. So those are my fulfilling moments, is that
Not
being able to help others, seeing them win drives me.
so helping others and seeing them win. How have you chosen to let's just say remove or to keep at distance detrimental people in your life? How have you set those boundaries for yourself?
Great question. So one of the best things I did, I want to say it was about 6 years ago. I changed my phone number. So I always had an 850. I'm originally from Pensacola, Florida, in the Panhandle. So I changed my phone number. And the reason why is so I would not wake up to drunk text messages, drunk voicemails, just drunk calls nonstop, because it would affect me a lot. It would just throw me off. I could have a great day, and then I was just like, man, I still have to work all day. I can't have this. So one of the best things I did for myself was changing my phone number. So that broke the barrier of this thing lighting up. My phone never lights up because of anything negative. The only people that have my number are my friends or my clients. So I don't get spam calls. I don't get calls from family, nothing else. They could email me on a personal email, not the business email. They can contact me on social media. But besides that, I don't get any negative phone calls or texts. So when I open my phone, I have control of what I'm going to see. And I do the same thing with social media in regards to the barrier. I'll post my morning routine and I don't look at anything. When I do want to scroll, I'm intentional. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to find some funny fitness memes and send it to my buddies. Or I want to check on whatever I want to check on. But something that people could do is be more intentional about what they're doing. Who am I allowing to call me and text me? Can I break that barrier? For some, they might be like, that sounds crazy. But is it? Because some family members, they mainly use Facebook. They mainly communicate in WhatsApp or all these other apps. They don't really call as much. But at least for me, that really helped me. It gave me even more power. And I'd never had any more interruptions on getting a drunk text, call, voicemail, etc. Midway on a call or waking up to that. So that was one of the best things that I did for myself, was change the phone number. And that broke the barrier of the entry. So drawing that line in the sand and saying, enough is enough. This is not going to happen for another decade. Like, how long will I get this? And I always think of the Tony Robbins quote, you get what you tolerate. It's very straightforward, but it always stood out to me. You get what you tolerate. And I would tell myself that I'm like, I'm the one tolerating her or him to call me and text me 17 paragraphs of just madness. And then the next day saying, hey, I hope you have a great day. Like they forgot it. I'm like, did you not scroll up and see this toxic mess? But I was tolerating it. So at first I blocked, and then they would call from other numbers. And I was like, what am I going to do? Just keep blocking every single number? They're going to keep finding new numbers. So I was like, why don't I just change my phone number? So I paid the whatever it was at the time, changed it. And that was one of the best things. And it was because of the communication. And so another thing that I did, I told myself, I'm going to use all my mental bandwidth and energy on building myself and helping others in the business. And for years, I went now talking to family. And I'm not saying that everyone should do this, but if their conscience is guiding them, your conscience will never lead you wrong. Many people will say, no, they're your family, or no, they're your best friend. You've known them for 10 years, 20 years, whatever. I look at it in this way. Are they draining you or adding to you? Are they draining you or adding to you? So if you look at it in that context, family, friends, blood or not, who is draining you and who's actually fueling you up? That's just the lens that I look at things. So to this day, I still do it. If a certain friend, family member, or client like crosses a certain line and is just saying stuff that's too derogatory, or I can tell it's just not, they're not just having a moment. You can always tell when somebody's having a moment, which is fine. We're all human. But if somebody's going down a certain path and they don't want to get the help or they don't want to make a change, then it's like, hey, we have to cut ties because other people depend on me. So I can't use all of my mental energy on said person and mental bandwidth, because that means everyone else is going to get neglected, or they might feel my energies off and they start asking me, hey, Derick, what's wrong? But it's because this one person, whoever it is draining me. And then I don't show up my true strong self for others because I'm letting this person drain me. So everybody's losing. So that's just the perspective that I always looked at it as. But I would just ask people, are the people that you speak to in person, online, and via text or on the phone, are they adding to you, building you up, or are they strictly only draining you, or maybe just using you? They just need you for money. They need you for right. Like we can always be honest with that. It's hard at first, but
Mm-hmm.
once we start to really set a boundary, that can be the game changer.
So good, Derick. You've given us a lot to think about. And especially if I could just pick it apart, in what I train on is you have attempted several different levels of boundaries until you found one that worked for you, because a
Yes.
boundary is only something you can control. You can't control their behavior. And it sounds like your parents and your family have chosen a behavior and you didn't condemn them. You didn't say you need to do something different. You haven't condemned them this whole process. You just said, I need this to fully function for the people who depend on me. And that's a line that I had to draw too, of my children needed me, and so I couldn't spend the time, looking for my husband or wondering where he was or calling around the friends or all those things. I needed permission to go to bed so I could get up at 6 a.m. and take care of the little people who depended on me.
Yes.
So all you moms that are watching, there's two things I really, really want to pull out for you. That yes, children are resilient. I'm sure Derick would have wanted a different situation. On the other hand, would you be the same Derick without this situation?
I definitely wouldn't. Going back to another one of my favorite quotes is it's also about Tony Robbins, but I heard this first when I was 11, and it's crazy how it struck me. So I was watching or listening to the cassette or watching it, one of the two, but Tony mentioned if my mother gave me the love that I wanted, I wouldn't be the man I am today. If my mother gave me the love that I wanted, I wouldn't be the man that I am today. When I first heard that, I was like, I relate to this. And my friends were like, what are you talking about? You're like, we're in middle school. Why are you watching this? Like, go back to playing video games. And I was like, you don't
That's right.
understand. And so like nobody, because I was never the complainer. I would never tell anybody what was happening at home because my parents were like well known in the city and all. I was like, I'm not trying to bash
Sure.
anybody's reputation. I don't want that to go around. I need to find a better way because I'm not just the finger pointer and to bash anyone. That's just never been my nature. So I just never said anything to anyone except for my best friends. Even they didn't believe me. And I was like, watch this. Tomorrow night, I'm gonna lay my phone down, put it under the table, and you just listen. The next morning, they're like, holy, that was a wild night. And I was like, hey, there you go. I'm not making this up.
Well, and I think you would agree. We're certainly not telling people not to get help if there are
Exactly.
crisis situations going on.
Oh, yes.
That is important, and for children to speak out. There's a lot more available now for getting safe, for doing those types of things. But we're also looking at that this journey has built strength in you that you've chosen to see rather than be a victim to them. And it's also built you the strength to build those boundaries and say, you're draining my energy. I'm not, this is not a place I can stay. I need to do something different, which is a very, Jesus does this as well. When the rich young ruler comes to him and just wants him as a trinket on his wrist and says, I just want to be part of
Yes.
this because it's a thing to do right now. Jesus says, that's not going to work for me. It's either all or nothing right here. So,
Exactly.
we've got a great setup for this. What would you say being a child, so child of an alcoholic is kind of the phrase that is typically used. Being a child of an alcoholic family, what would you say to parents right now who are moving towards recovery? What are their children, if your mom could have said or your dad could have said some things, or one of them was moving towards recovery, what could they have said to you that would have not made it all right, but you have such a strong sense of safety already, but given you some connection, given you some of that love that you were seeking, what could they say to you in hindsight?
Okay. That's a great question. And I was 19 years old when my mother actually did this, which helped. I haven't mentioned it yet, but I appreciate you bringing this up. So I was 19. I came home from college. It was a weekend. I think we're having a cookout or something. And our house was always the go-to house for the cookouts, the pool, and all that. So I showed up beforehand, and being German, we clean up. I'm a professional cleaner. because I was, that's just how it is. You're OCD. So you grow up in a German household, you got to clean. So with that being said, I came home for college that weekend and I was helping her clean up and everything. She's like, hey, before the guests get here, I need to tell you something. And I was like, oh, okay. And she, at that time, she wasn't drinking yet. It was still like 2 p.m. afternoon. Everything was fine. I was in normal mood. And then she told me, she was like, hey, you know, all these years that I was screaming, I was yelling at somebody in my past. And in that moment,
Mm.
I was like, I knew it. I always felt it in my core, in my soul, in my being that you were not yelling at me. She was like yelling at me, but through me, because her eyes would look through me. She wouldn't see her son. And so she told me what dark moments happened to her multiple occasions as a teenager. And then she cried in my arms, cried with her. But in the moment, I just felt like a million pounds came off of my chest, off of my shoulders, because I knew that I felt that it was something similar to that. But then she told me, so hearing her verbalize it. And there was no, I'm sorry, anything like that. It was more so, here's what happened. And I was like, all right, I appreciate you telling me. I'm glad you feel better. And I went about it. But I left the house that day, that night, much lighter. So going back to the current parent who's on the road to recovery, when you feel that there's a calm moment, that is a good timing. And I'm not saying there's perfect timing and you have to wait on the perfect day, but when you feel it, pull him or her to the side and just say, you know what? I have something to tell you. Mom went through this when I was 17. XYZ happened when I was 14. 3 years ago, this and this happened. And after that moment, I was trying to mask that pain, that embarrassment, that emotion. So I got into drinking, I got into alcohol. This is why mom or dad currently does this. I'm working on it, but that is one of the main things that caused me to start to need an outlet because other things just weren't working. I lost faith. I started drinking, whatever it was. But I challenge parents just to be more vulnerable and honest. Honesty is everything in the communication. I know it sounds so cliche and so simple, but if you could just let them know that one thing, because that one thing makes you feel better, makes them feel better. Yes, you might cry together. Yes, they might be angry. But deep down, once everybody's calm, both people are going to feel better, the parent and the child. Because you're gonna be like, wow, that's why they do this. And then that the parent might feel this is crazy. I actually told them why instead of just try to overshadow it. So just that transparency can help a lot. It definitely helped me. I could tell what it was, but hearing that from them can make a major difference, even if it's years later. Some people they hear this on their parents' deathbed. So again, I'm not saying it has to be the perfect timing, but whenever your conscience or God is guiding you to say it, just let them know. You don't have to go into dark detail. You can just give them a synopsis of what happened and what made you start going down this path. And then I guarantee you that your child will feel much more calmer, have clarity. I'm not saying it's going to heal all wounds, but it'll definitely help both of you.
That's amazing, Derick. And one of the things you had said earlier was about doing your own inner healing work. And it sounds like you started at 11.
Yeah, that's when it
That's
got
just
really,
so
that's just when it
young.
got really dark. So sports, I was related to the mentality of sports. Like just pushing yourself. I was that kid. I was watching Rocky on repeat. I was watching Michael Jordan autobiography videos, watching this, watching that. I loved music, so I would watch 8 Mile back to back to back, and I was like, I relate to his Eminem's relationship with his mom. Like I would just absorb all of this stuff, and I was like, I'm not the only one. So when I knew that I wasn't the only one and saw proof on countless moments, I was like, if they went through it and got to the top in whatever they do, I know I can as well. And I would just tell myself that. And then I got to a point where I saw so many other crazy stories of veterans that lost their limbs, just all the most darkest scenarios. And I was like, darker scenario, massive success, and whatever their version of success is. And I saw so many walking examples. Not that I met all these people, but I saw proof. All I needed as a child and teen was proof. Once I saw the proof, I was like, that's it. I know what to do. And then something just took over. And I was like, I saw proof, and there it is.
Amazing. And it's just amazing. I know the story is really going to bless folks. Can you tell us again, Derick, where to find you, how to hear more about you, and the if I understand correctly, you still have space for coaching clients, and it's not just about fitness. You work with people who are in the
Yes.
middle of a divorce, all kinds of other things. So tell us where to find you again.
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me the easiest way is on Instagram, and that is Fit with Derick 2. And then Facebook, just Derick Johnson. It's all the same picture on every app. And then my coaching website is fitwithderick.com. And on there, I like to show pictures and videos of clients so they can see and hear their stories. I always say real people with real results. Social media can get a little sketchy, Photoshop and all that.
Mm.
So I like to have pictures and videos, and you may relate to one of these women, one of these gentlemen on there and their journey. So I like having them talk about their journey instead of me just talking about it. So if you like the raw, in your face, blunt authenticity, then I might be for you or I might not. But either way, is I'm just here to help serve, and I know so are you.
Now you do some men's retreats. Tell the audience about that, what that looks like. Who should show up for those?
So currently, we have weekly men's calls, and it's absolutely free. Every Wednesday, we do men's calls via Zoom, and it is a safe space for men. My buddy and I created it during quarantine because a lot of us were working at home. A lot of them have kids, and they're just like, I need some camaraderie. So we don't discuss sports, we don't discuss women, we don't discuss anything. We focus on one topic. So a recent topic has been integrity and family.
Mm.
I would
Mm-hmm.
open up about what works for me. He opens up about what works for him. And the last half of the call, we have Q&A. If he needs help with this scenario, he's honest. We record the call, have it in a private app. Everything we say on the call stays there, but they at least know that there's a place with other gentlemen that they can depend on, which is very rare today because a lot of people, especially as men, suck it up, man up, hold it in, put more weight on the bar, push that weight, drink it away, like whatever. That stuff doesn't help. It might help for 5 minutes, but it's not going to help long term. So we do weekly calls, and besides that, we're planning retreats in person. So this is for any gentleman that is looking to get a good solid connection with men, but most importantly, release past traumas and past pain, where we no longer
Mm.
carry that into every relationship, work setting, etc. We all pretty much know that one key thing we want to get rid of. We will help you get rid of that 1000%.
Fantastic. Well, Derick, it has been my pleasure. I am way over time. I could talk to you for another hour because there's so much to unpack here. And the key for I think families and parents right now is you just don't know. Now, in the ideal world, we'd all like for everybody to be in a loving, capable family, but that's not the way it is. So there are things that are happening that God has control over, and it may really change that whole person. So if we spend our time in victimhood, which you haven't said anything about, you've said hope, moving forward, using the sports as outlets, making sure you have purpose, setting clear boundaries, all those types of things. And Derick, like many people who come back from trauma backgrounds, you've taken that and turned that into fuel. And that's just amazing. I am excited for parents to listen to this, even though it's going to be hard to hear for some people.
Oh,
So I
definitely.
really appreciate you.
I appreciate you having me, and I'm glad that we are able to dive deep. So the whole intent is just to help people. But once again, Tanya, thanks for having me. And the last thing I just want to leave people with is create the man or woman that you would be proud of and give them to the world. Create the man or woman that you would be proud of and give him or her to the world. Whatever you need to do to make that happen, just make it happen.